it was helpful for me because I was exposed to the business at a very early and young age. And immigrant children take on big responsibilities because you have to grow up very fast.
Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm Cynthia Chaplin, and this is Voices. Every Wednesday, I will be sharing conversations with international wine industry professionals, discussing issues in diversity, equity, and inclusion through their personal experiences working in the field of wine. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and rate our show wherever you get your pods. Hello and welcome to Voices. This is me, Cynthia Chaplin, and today I am so excited to welcome Vanessa Robledo and her daughter Jocelyn to Voices. Vanessa is the CEO of Vintneràs Diary, the California winery that she founded with her mom, Maria, and her daughter. And the Robledo family have been working in the California wine business since the 1940s. So Vanessa represents the fourth generation of the family, and Jocelyn is the fifth. So she's had a very successful career running Robledo Family Winery and working with Black Coyote Winery and gaining lots and lots of accolades and awards in the process. So the decision to found her own winery was especially important to her due to the fact that the wine industry is still very exclusive, as we know, and the majority of wine managers and owners are still men. So this was a conversation I've been dying to have with both of you. I'm very excited. So welcome both Jocelyn and Vanessa. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Cynthia. We're honored to be on your show.
Yeah, thank you.
Great pleasure. So this is such an interesting story. Your family came to the USA from Mexico as part of the Braceros labor program during World War II, when Mexican men and women were brought into the US to work in the agricultural fields. And your great-grandfather and his sons lived in a labor camp at the beginning and worked their way up to a solid reputation as excellent grape grafters by the 1950s. And then in 1984, your parents, Vanessa, bought 11 acres in Los Carneros, one of my favorite places in California, and planted Pinot Noir. So what was it like for you growing up in Sonoma and Napa? You had 8 brothers and sisters. I thought my family was large. I have 6 children, but your mom beats me hands down. So what was it like growing up there?
It was very, very nice. In a way, it was very isolating because we always lived out in the country. We were always surrounded by vineyards. And my dad was always either in charge of a vineyard or it was the one that our family had planted and was growing. So for us, I think it was a connection that we always had with the land. Going back many generations in Mexico, when they came to the United States, naturally they gravitated towards agriculture. And so for us, the children now of my parents who had worked very hard in as vineyard workers, we also learned from my parents, what it was. Every day we would, either after school or during weekends, we were out there working very hard. And so that as adults, we have such a deep appreciation for what the land is and also what the beauty of the vine that creates this product, the grape, and then which is not then converted into wine. And so the appreciation that we have for wine is grand. And for me, as a woman, it was important to stand, to stand. I wouldn't say stand alone, but create my own away from my family as well, to become an individual in the wine industry. And so that was something that my daughter Jocelyn is now joining me, and my mother Maria.
I'm so envious. I have 4 daughters, and I am desperately trying to get one of them to join me in the wine business. So we'll come back to that because that's a good topic for me. But I think it's so interesting, that your family has such a long history of vine stewardship, and I think it's something that we don't talk about enough. We certainly don't talk about it in Italy hardly at all. One of the things that really makes me quite angry at my own industry, which I love. So, one of the things that you want to do is to help that to grow, and you're in the right area. There's so many people who are working on elevating vine stewards and vine stewardship as a career, not just a job. So Your parents are amazing. They started in 1997 with their own, piece of. Well, they of course bought their land in 1984, but they started to make their own wine in 1997. It's so interesting how I think many wineries start off, selling their grapes to winemakers and then change their mind. So this was the very first winery founded by Mexican American workers, and you played a huge role in the winery. As you said, you were working in it as a little kid, and then helping your father with English, and eventually you took over the company. So what was it like being a young Latina woman in such an important role in a winery at that point? You had a huge weight of family history, and responsibility and a new business to cope with. So, were you under a lot of pressure to succeed? What were you thinking at the time when you took over? That was a big move for you.
Yeah, that's right, Cynthia. If I was to look back, I mean, first of all, I was a daughter of immigrants. Both of my parents were immigrants. They did not speak. My dad spoke English, but he spoke it with such a strong accent that when he would go to meetings, they didn't understand him, and he was such a proud man that he didn't like to repeat himself. So he would bring me along in his meetings since I was 11, 12 years old to translate. So that's how I learned the wine business, is just translating, repeating, back and forth. And again, my dad understood the language and understood English, but his speaking, it did have a strong accent. So it was helpful for him that I came along. And it was helpful for me because I was exposed to the business at a very early and young age. And immigrant children take on big responsibilities because you have to grow up very fast. And that's what I did with my parents. I was translating for them for everything. To this day, my mom doesn't know English. Obviously, she raised 9 children, 7 boys and 2 girls, and that was her life. She dedicated to helping my dad in the vineyard, cooking all the delicious food, and then raising us as children. So to take on a role like that for me was, I was very proud to do that for my family because I wanted to help my family. I wanted to do everything possible because I knew that both of my parents grew up with nothing. Basically in Mexico, they were very poor. And they would always tell us, you need to appreciate the food you have on the table. You need to appreciate the work we have out in the field in the vineyard. So they taught us very young to appreciate things that they didn't have. So because of that, I took on that responsibility, and it was a lot. I was only 19 years old when my sister married the winemaker, and my dad said, okay, we're starting a new business. We're going to make the wine, so that was really everything just happened to fall into place for our family. And so that's how the winery was started, is because my sister married a winemaker, and my dad gave them grapes to make for themselves, and then some grapes to make for the Robledo family winery.
I have to ask, what did your mother think when you took over the company? You were 19. It's not a traditional thing in, traditional Mexican culture for women to take over anything.
Well, my mom always knew something was different with me because both of my parents encouraged my sister and I to learn how to cook at a very young age. And she always saw that I wasn't that good. So she was very concerned for me when I was very young. She thought, oh no, Vanessa, she can't cook. Her tortillas aren't, the figure isn't right. Like, what are we going to do with this girl? But she saw that I had a talent in the business side of it, with all the paperwork that we had to do for the business. So because of that, she accepted it. She still would always tell me, Vanessa, you need to learn how to cook because you have to be a good wife. And the only way to be a good wife is to cook. And so I always had that pressure, the traditional pressure of being a woman that also allowed, for to be, they didn't allow me fully to be strong, which is my natural character. I had to kind of always downplay my strength as a woman in the beginning with my parents because they would always say, no, that's not how a woman should be. Um, so for that, for in that part, it was very hard for me. It was very hard to downplay, speaking back to my brothers, for example, or speaking back to my dad. I had to do it in a very soft way in order for it to be accepted. And and I had to do that in the beginning of running the company too. So I had to learn how to get along with seven brothers, and a father who was very strong. And I think that taught me and gave me the strength to be able to succeed in the wine industry in general.
Yeah, if you can pull your weight through a family of seven brothers and a sister, I think you probably have a lot of strength.
Yeah, and being in a male dominated family and in culture, and then going into a male dominated industry. So that's, I think, how I learned to be able to navigate the wine industry the way that I do.
Jocelyn, does your mom cook now?
Yes.
She learned in the end. She learned.
Yes. And we also learn together. We always get tips from my grandma and stuff, and we look up recipes. So we've learned.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I want to get back to this, Vanessa, with with the obstacles that you faced. Taking over, as you said, your family was male dominated, the industry male dominated. Your mom understood that it was going to be something good for you to do, but how did everybody else react to you? How did people in the wine business and even your own staff react when you took over Robledo Family Winery?
Well, I was the first employee in the company for the first 5 years. So I didn't have employees working with me. It wasn't until I started growing the company, because we started with 100 cases and in 97. And from there, we started growing the production, doubling it, and so on. So I was able to sell it all myself. But once we started growing and opening up the tasting room, that's when we really started growing production. So at that point is when we hired people. And the wine industry took me in because I was very genuine with who I was. I was a daughter of vineyard workers. We're starting this winery and I need help. I want to learn. And so there were people in the industry that taught me things. They told me how things, how to sell wine, for example, because I had no idea how to do that. And so, because they were able to help me, I was able to continue to grow the company.
I think winery people, and I say this a lot, all around the world tend to be the most generous of spirit people that there are. So I'm really glad to hear that people took you in and took you under their wing and helped you out. And your numbers are phenomenal. As you said, you started off in '97 with just 100 cases, and by 2007 you were making 20,000 cases a year. So that's unbelievable growth. What did your family say?
My family was it was very conflicting, Cynthia, because my dad really never expressed pride in me, even to the day that I left, because a very traditional man. He's I can say he's very tough, but he has a good heart. He's a good man. And but they just wanted growth. They wanted to be able to for me to continue working. And the challenge with that was that if I can continue working at Robledo all my life, but at that point I was a single mom. I had divorced Jocelyn's father, and I wanted to create something for myself. And my dad said, well, you can work here for the rest of your life. You'll be taken care of. You won't need anything, but you can never own. And I wanted ownership. I felt I had, at that point, I had worked very hard to show that I deserved it, but because of tradition, I couldn't own. So because it's seen as a woman loses her last name, so it won't be multiplied by the daughter. I had to allow my brothers to own. And so for me, that I just I couldn't believe that. I thought, no, Dad, you need to change the way things are. And my dad refused. So at that point I left. I left the family winery in 2007, and to create something where my daughter would then say, I can have a piece of. I didn't want any limits on myself as a woman, just because I'm a woman, or my daughter. And that's, I only had one daughter, and I wanted to make sure that for her future, she knew there was no glass ceilings.
Yeah, I think it's amazing what becoming a mother of a daughter does to you. It does. It gives you this drive to be a role model, and to make sure that your daughter sees you as a strong person and sees that being a strong woman is something she can emulate too. Those are things that I never thought of before I had my first daughter, and it kind of surprised me how fierce I got about it. So I can
Exactly.
understand. And plus, when you're breaking your back working so hard for the company to grow it like that, and then not be able to have ownership. And this was 2007, not 1897. So I'm sure it must have been unbelievably frustrating. But you made the move to Black Coyote Wines in Napa, and they're very, very well known, award winning Cabernet Sauvignons that were served at the White House in 2011, 2014. So what happened? How did you get hooked up with Black Coyote wines? Um, and what was it like walking into a completely different winery that wasn't your family's winery?
Well, I waited a year. I did consulting for food and wine festivals for a year. So that's I started a company, and decided to just focus on that. And it wasn't until after that year that I got a call from Dr. Ernest Bates, which is a founder of Black Coyote Chateau, was the name of the brand. And he was someone that had followed my career since I started. And he said, "Well, I heard through the grapevine that you're no longer with your family. Would you consider running our Cabernet wine brand?" And so at that point, I knew it was like a high end brand. It was over $100 bottle of wine. And I didn't have a lot of experience in that, but I had some experience in it. So I was a little nervous because I didn't really know how to sell the ultra premium brand. But what I did is I went into the meeting and I said, if you give me ownership, because I thought, well, I have nothing to lose. I'm just going to ask them, because that's what I mainly want. I said, if you give me ownership of the brand, um, I'll consider joining and running your company. So it didn't take him long, and he said, okay, we'll start you off at 2%, you know, and we'll see how it goes. But what I'm more interested in is I have about 5 people working here doing different things. Can you replace their work, and I'll give you the salary that I pay all of them, because it's too much for me to manage. I want one person to do it all. And so at that point, I felt bad for everybody, but I knew I could do it. And I also had to think about raising my daughter. So I thought, yes, I could do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those interesting things too. You as you said, in the midst of this career, big career with your family, decide to leave, new big career with Black Coyote, and all of this time, you were a mom. Jocelyn was born in 1988, and you said she grew up being your plus one at lots of wine events. My daughters know exactly what that means. They've been dragged around vineyards and wine events for their whole lives. So, what was it like for you at that point, trying to make a new career with Black Coyote, taking on a lot of job responsibility? As you said, you took on the jobs of 5 people. Um, you know, what was it like just trying to juggle your work and your home life with Jocelyn? Wine events are not very well known for being child friendly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jocelyn, I think she was born in 98. So at that time, she might have been 10. And it was very, very challenging because she was a little girl. And yes, she had to come with me to a lot of meetings. It was difficult to, I also had support from her dad and my mom. So from that perspective, it became easier to navigate. But there were times they couldn't help, so she had to come along. And it was nice in the way, Cynthia, that I think our children pick up things that we don't even know that they do. What when it comes to seeing us in a role, to from that to what we say, they pick up things. And so I noticed that Jocelyn knew a lot about wine. And so but even though at that age she was telling me, Mom, so this gives you encouragement, okay, Cynthia? She would tell me, Mom, I never want to get in the wine industry. That was, she always said that. Um, so that I'm glad that it didn't happen that way, because I wanted, someday to work with my daughter.
So, Jocelyn, what was it like for you as a little girl being dragged along in your mom's work life? I'm sure you had lots of things that you would rather have been doing at the time. As Vanessa said, you declared you were never getting into wine. But what was it like for you during those years when you were sort of trailing your mom and seeing her be a boss?
Um, well, for me, it was kind of just normal. Like, that's how my mom is. And I kind of knew that my mom wasn't like other moms. For example, like I would go to events with her and it was just her and I, and she would teach me like how to introduce myself and how to shake hands. And I always had a firm handshake. And I just remember she taught me a lot of things about how to just be a well-behaved child. And so I remember just like being really proud of how I would get compliments that I was well-behaved, and I felt like I was like a little adult. And I just really enjoyed spending time with my mom, because sometimes she would go on trips and I would be spending time with my grandma and my dad, and I missed her a lot. So I felt very special being able to be one of the adults for a night, or being able to be uh, with really like just like an older crowd. It was really cool being like the only child there, and I had a lot of fun doing it, and I think the most important part was that I got to spend time with my mom. So any moment that I got to, it was a very nice time.
That's so nice to hear, and it clearly rubbed off on you because we know you're working with her now. But originally wine was just not your thing, and eventually you discovered your documentary content creating skills, and you branched out on your own. So, what made you decide to come back and join your mother at Vintner's Diary? What are you doing? How are you interacting together? What are the roles? Is it working out, or is she driving you crazy?
I'm actually having a really great time working with my mom. I didn't think about doing it until 2023, at the end of that year. um, or was it 2022? It was at the end of 2022, sorry. And I think my mom and I were both at similar stages in our lives at that point. We had met up, we were at dinner. It was around Christmas time, and my mom has been helping my grandma for a really long time, especially after her divorce from my grandfather. So I knew that my mom put in a lot of time with my grandma, but I always had a sense that she wasn't fully doing anything for herself just yet. And whenever we would like, there just wasn't anything that give her that spark in her eye that she had like when she worked for Black Coyote, or when she was president for um, Robledo family. There was just something that she had, like a certain drive to her at that time, and I felt like it wasn't there when we were meeting for Christmas. um, and so her and I talked, and I told her that I believed it was time for her to start doing something for herself. And she agreed, and she asked me if I would join, and I agreed. And it was just like this crazy, within 2 weeks I had quit my job. I was working for a baseball team out here in Chicago, and I quit my job and I decided to start working with my mom. And I had zero doubts in what we were doing was going to be something special, even if it was just being able to say that I got to work with my mom. I knew
You
that.
have just given me so much hope. I love you, Jocelyn. I hope that will come my way with one of mine. But the two of you are making a rosé Grenache together now. And Vanessa, you said that creating a wine production that is inclusive and versatile with various cuisines, particularly complementing Latin flavors, was paramount to this project. So why did you decide to go for rosé, and why Grenache? We all know about White Zinfandel in California. What made you choose Grenache? Tell us a bit about the wine and the thinking behind what you decided to create.
Well, the reason that we decided to work with Rosé is because it is a very versatile wine. It's one of the few wines you can pair with many different dishes.
Absolutely. I am totally on board with that concept. Everyone who knows me knows that I am an Italian rosé specialist, and I believe in that.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, you guys make some amazing rosé. I'm a big fan. Uh, and so the thinking behind it was, obviously I come from a Mexican culture and I wanted to be able to pair a wine with various different dishes that my mom makes. And my mom's an excellent cook. I mean, her food has been featured in Savor magazine. She's been, written about in People magazine and Reader's Digest. So her food has been written about in various different publications. And I wanted to make sure that the wine that we produced was a very balanced wine. So for us, it doesn't have the high acidity of the whites and it doesn't have the high tannins of the reds. So that's one of the things that really makes me want to promote the wine as a versatile wine. And the reason that we selected the varietal um, Grenache is because it some of the best Grenaches in the world from Provence are have that grape. It's not easy to find in Napa because in Napa you get paid more per ton if you sell your Cabernet. So a lot of the land is growing Cabernet and the Bordeaux varietals. So I didn't think I was going to be able to find it. Unfortunately, I was able to find it in Napa. It's a small 5-acre vineyard, and I'm able to get an allotment every year. So I decided, obviously, in the Carneros area where we have our land, it's very too cool, so it wouldn't grow the Grenache grape. But this vineyard is located in Rutherford, so almost in the middle Napa Valley floor where the vineyard is located. So it's really ideal for that Grenache grape. And this year we decided to add about 6% Malbec in the wine. So we're going, Cynthia, we're really opening ourselves up to challenging ourselves in the wine industry and trying to do something that we haven't done before, because if we continue doing everything we've done, it's not going to challenge us. It's not going to make us grow as people. And I think for us, that's what we want. We want to be able to promote our wine brand as 3 generations of Latinas in California producing this one wine at this time. For the future, we'll consider other varieties, but for now, we're just making this one.
It's an incredible story. I love that your mother's still very, very much a part of, what you're doing, and she has, made her own fame. And I'm sure, a generation before you, when women really weren't supposed to be doing things like this, she has made her own career through her food. I'm going to cry because I love Mexican food, and that is one thing we cannot get in Italy. I have to get my friends to send me ingredients, but so coming up, what are the plans? You released your first vintage just a year ago. So what are the goals and the ambitions for Vintner's Diary? You've got your mom, you've roped Jocelyn back in, the three amazing Latinas together. What are you planning?
For us, we're really opening up ourselves to, like I mentioned earlier, challenge ourselves and refine our product. We would like to grow the production. Obviously, in Napa, we're limited, so I might have to source from other areas. That and also see if there's a possibility of us growing our own and finding leases or something where we are able to plant our own vineyards and have 100% control of everything. Um, but that's so our future plans are to grow. How fast and when, we're not quite sure. Jocelyn can talk a little bit about her social media plans and what to create. I mean, Jocelyn's very creative, so I see her as an artist, and she's living in Chicago now, and she from there she works with me every day creating content for about wine. So I'll let her talk about what she wants to do for the future.
Absolutely. And I love how the story has kind of come full circle. You know, your parents didn't own their own winery at the beginning, and now you're, you know, back at this part where you want to buy some vineyards yourself. So it's very cyclical, interesting family story in the way that, you know, you've rolled it out over the years. So Jocelyn, I stalked you, no word of a lie. So I agree with your mother. You are quite an artist. So, you know, tell us about how you're inspired by the vineyard. You know, what would you like to do differently for yourself than what your mom has done? Obviously, she's a winemaker, she's running the company. What are you bringing to the table? What do you want to do? Let's hear what your plans are for the social media. We all know how important social media is. So where are you going with it?
Well, I really appreciate your compliment, so thank you. But I would like to continue making our videos that are little wine tidbits videos. I think they're super important, and I've had a few people tell me how they have felt less intimidated by wine by watching our videos. So I'm really proud of that, and I want to continue to open that door to educating people on wine um, through what I've experienced with my family and from my mom's knowledge and my own knowledge. I would love to continue helping people learn to enjoy wine as much as we do and to see that it's not just an alcoholic beverage. It's more than that. There's people that are behind it. There are important people that are picking those grapes. There's a story in each bottle. So we want to continue sharing our story and, you know, our diary, which is the wine, with people and educating them on how important this product is. And so, yeah, I just think my mom has done a great job at doing that so far, but just converting that to the digital age and creating those videos and just making them more beautiful. I would love to get a camera one day. Right now, I'm filming on my phone, but I mean, it does pretty good quality, but I would love a camera, and I would just love to continue continue increasing the quality of our brand and our videos.
Well, see, this is classic daughter thing. You know, did you hear that, Vanessa? Christmas. I would like a camera, please.
Yeah.
Classic. Slip that in there.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting what you were saying about making people feel less intimidated. I'm a wine educator. I'm a professor of wine. You know, I'm an Italian wine ambassador. I teach WSET, you know, fairly frequently as well. And wine language is really exclusive. I am working very hard to sort of walk away from that kind of scary, pretentious, exclusive way of teaching wine that was the past. And I think teaching wine in the future is going to be completely different. So tell us what you've got planned for, you know, what are you going to do with these videos? You're doing a lot of storytelling. Um, and I love what you're doing, you know, trying to take away this scary pretentiousness. What are the plans? How are you going about this?
I think we'd love to be more interactive with people. I love hearing feedback, good or bad. I think it helps us improve. So I think if I would love to hear more from the people who watch our videos of what they would like to see. Um, but I also really want to just get down into the fields and work with um, my mom and get some like content of my mom and my grandma because they really are extremely hands-on in the vineyards. And I think that it's really unique that they have a wine brand, but they're also in the fields picking the grapes. So I think showing that is really important, and I would love to continue to create documentary style videos in the future.
That's a fabulous idea. You know, a lot of people who are doing social media in wine these days, you know, unfortunately, COVID did some good things and bad things. You know, now as long as you have a bikini on and a glass of rosé, you're a wine influencer, and you're, you know, rosé all day, you're an expert. So I think that that idea of getting some content in the fields, seeing the background, connecting what's in your glass to actually the soil where it grew, the place that it's from, and the people, your mother and your grandmother, is a fantastic idea. And I really wish you well. I think that's going to be something to watch and very, very creative and very likely to get people much more involved. So I cannot thank both of you enough for coming on today. I really appreciate it. I think your story is beautiful and important for people to hear. I'm dying to taste your wine. That's something I'll have to do next time I'm in the States. But I want to wish you both the best, and I'm going to keep my eye on Vintner's Diary because I want to see what Jocelyn does. We know Vanessa will do great. She's a boss. I want to see where Jocelyn goes with this. So thank you both very much for coming on.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. And we hope that you can visit us and have some Mexican food with the
Oh
Rosé.
my gosh, that's the dream right there.
Thank you for listening, and remember to tune in next Wednesday when I'll be chatting with another fascinating guest. Italian Wine Podcast is among the leading wine podcasts in the world and the only one with a daily show. Tune in every day and discover all our different shows. You can find us at ItalianWinePodcast.com, SoundCloud, Spotify, Himalaya, or wherever you get your pods.